a renowned Carnatic musician, an intellectual, a social activist, author, columnist, all rolled into one. Someone who stands firm on a range of political issues, whether it's NRC or farmers' protest or CAA, and who speaks sternly on a wide range of topics such as art and culture, literature, and of course, music. We have come across many facets of this angry young man. He is a winner of a Ramon Magsaysay Award in 2016. The citation says it all. It's for his forceful commitment as artist and advocate to art's power to heal India's deep social divisions, breaking barriers of caste and class to unleash what music has to offer, not just for some but for all.
It's not just great culture or heritage or diversity of heritage. It's also the fact that we've been in the forefront of anti-caste movements. So the dichotomy is even more stark. A state where probably led the country along with Maharashtra in modern era in asking those difficult questions of caste. With the Periyar movement, with the Dravida movement, you should expect much better, right? And I think this is something that I have grappled as much as you have, being born and brought up in this state. But I think that also brings about the reality of caste, right? The fact of the matter is, for using Ambedkar's phrase, annihilation of caste, is cannot be addressed only in a process mode. It's not good enough if your constitution says something. It's not good enough if you put certain processes in place. The question goes back to, what is our caste culture? We live in a caste culture. Now, irrespective of which part of society you come from, you're ingrained through your habits, through your rituals, through your cultural practices, through the music you listen to, through the dialect that you speak. Caste is all pervasive, right? So that's where the whole contestation is happening. Here you have a political movement that has been anti-caste so frontally. Yet, the fact of the matter is, there has also been a failure in changing the cultural habits of people of this state. So therefore, the system may put certain things in place and make certain things functional, whether it is in terms of affirmative action, reservation, and we have done an incredible job in that front. Nobody can ever deny that the number of people from marginalized sections who progress because of the policies of the state. But policy of the state is not enough. What is the culture of the state? I'm talking about people in government and out of government, all inclusive. There's no difference between us. That truly has not changed. Let's be honest to say that. Our culture has not changed. All we are more satisfied in saying is, I am not as casteist as the other person. Nobody is willing to ask the tough question, why am I casteist? I am having an anti-caste discourse, and I'll be the first one to admit that there are streaks of casteism in me. Because they are so deeply ingrained, I make mistakes every day, and I'm watching myself and saying, what was that? So, has that changed? There goes to our education. How much of anti-caste comprehension and experience is there in our education system? First of all, this entire public and private education system is a caste system. Who goes to public schools? Who goes to private schools? Everybody knows the answer to this question. It's a bandwidth of castes. And people going to government school want to go to private school. Why? Not only because it's English education. Also saying, who is going to be the friends of my classmates? So imagine, take my children, we can discuss anti-caste at home, we can talk about the horrible thing of caste, we can change habits at home. Yes. My children went to a private school. All their classmates are people like them. They've never experienced diversity of people in their life. Unless you experience it, and unless you make it a cultural habit, not a transactional happening or an accidental happening, how can you expect this to change? Therefore, we have culturally failed. Definitely. And that acknowledgement is essential for us. That we have culturally failed in transforming the state. And it is of great disappointment because you expect better from Tamil Nadu. We expect better from ourselves. Right? So, the first thing we have to stop doing is rating ourselves on levels of casteism. That's the most ugly thing we do in this state. That caste is more casteist than me. Can't be a more ugly articulation of it. What are you doing? What are our schools doing? How much are we sharing space? How much are we sharing our ways of living? Those things have to change, and that can be done. There can be cultural transformation. It may take 2-3 generations, but it has to happen through concerted effort, and that is why I think civil society is a very important part in this movement. If you ask me the ideal answer, everybody should be going only to public school. That's the ideal answer. But that's a non-functional answer, right? Because of the corporatization of private education and private education and also it's structurally difficult to enforce in any manner. Right? Even constitutionally, a person is most entitled to start a school if they want. I can't stop it. But I think I think public education has to be focused much more. I'm very, 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 very clear about it. And I think if we can, and there's this great stigma we have attached to government schooling. That has to change. And we know it is stigma more than anything else. We know that truth also, right? It's not like private schools are doing the greatest job. They are like a poultry farm, many of them. Truly, that's what they are, right? And government schools have been, many of them doing fabulous jobs. But the question is, how are we going to change that? And what are the conversations we are having in classrooms? I think that's where it begins. Parents have to change, but it's tougher to change parents. Children can change the parents. So what are the conversations happening in classrooms? How much are the teachers also being educated to deal with the complexity of our society? See, we are all affected by the way we are habituated. It's not just you, me, teachers, student, anybody, right? How much are we really empowering the teachers emotionally and intellectually to address this in a classroom? Do we have a non-violent classroom? Let's ask it's a philosophical question, but we have to ask deep questions. Is a classroom non-violent? The answer is no. There's violence in the words used in class, the violence in the way you would talk to a child who speaks a dialect that is not part of your caste bandwidth dialect. All this has to change systemically, which means the way the teachers are educated, sensitized. It doesn't only start in 2nd grade or 3rd grade. It starts even before, from the Anganwadis. Right? So I think it has to be a transformation in our entire perception of why we are sending children to school. Right? And here also there is discrimination. So if you ask what kind of education system you want, the elites, including people like me, will say, I want my child's horizons to be broadened. I want them to have freedom in thinking. Ask the same person what kind of education should be given to the marginalized, they'll say, get them a job. Why? Their horizons don't have to be widened. They don't need to dream big. They have to become machine tools. This is, honestly, the only word is obnoxious. But that's the language we speak, and I'm speaking of the elite. See, my discourse are with people like me. Let me be very clear. I'm nobody to talk to a person who's in the margin because I don't have the life experience. I have no business. I learned from that person. But what am I doing? What are we doing? Imagine the way we say our children have to be educated, and we will run schools for people on the margins. And they will have to get marks, and they'll have to get job in some factory at a machine shop. We won't think for them saying, let them imagine of creativity, let them have art. No. So there is a discrimination, intellectual discrimination also. And in all this, underlying caste is playing a role. So private education also needs to change. It's not enough if you just say there's an RTE and now you have a certain percentage of children from the community or from the yellow caste. It's not enough. Of course, the problems in that I'm not going to. But I'm saying, are you telling me that the school children don't know who RTE children are? They all know. How? Have you ever asked that question? What has the school done? What do the schools do to make sure that the children from the community who are coming in also are given the required cushion, given the required care, such that the new environment, which is a very intimidating environment, is not discriminating against them? No. Because these schools think they're doing a favor. So it has to change in what I would call classroom culture. Then it can change. And it's a long haul. I'm not saying tomorrow morning you're going to find difference. But this is, cultural transformation is always harder than putting things. But you need to put some systems in place. We've not put enough systems in place. But we also need to engage in the cultural transformation of the people engaging, including ourselves. I think there are two things. One is, I can only speak from as a parent, I can give you that answer. Well, you must ask my children whether we did a good job with that or not. But I'm going to think we did. But I think, I was lucky enough to grow up in a house, my home, when I was a child, where there was no conversation that was barred. No question that was barred. I could discuss anything with my parents. Absolutely anything. I think that was a gift. Huge gift as far as homes go. So can our homes be like that? That any child can, and are we as parents willing to be challenged by our children? I think teachers have to ask the same question in the classroom. Are we willing to be challenged by the student? Seriously challenged, not on some subject matter. Those serious questions that poke you when you know you're wrong but you don't want to admit it. We all have it as parents and as teachers, right? I teach music, so I know when I'm like, oh my God, that's not a question I want to hear, right? And that's when we get violent. That's when, because we know we are like pushed to a corner and we don't want to say sorry, or we don't want to admit, then we get offensive because we have the power to do it. That needs to stop it. Not that I do it always, but I'm also as flawed as you are. But can we stop that? Can the home be really... See, I think if the home can be a place of a fair degree of freedom, then that is carried forward. And that also gives them the spirit to challenge power. The best way to change it is give children the spirit to challenge power. Our political, economic, social, all issues can be handled. Because then the children will take over. Give them the power, give them the freedom to say you can challenge any power. And then they'll come together. Then they will talk, then they will listen, they will realize the primary responsibility of any form of strength is to stand by the people who don't have that strength. That's the principal responsibility of privilege. That you're allies of people who don't have that privilege. Whatever degree of privilege may be in your life. I think then it can happen. So I think parents have to be ready to say sorry. That's a tough one. Of course, I can't tell you details of what we are writing the report, obviously. And controversies kept aside. I'm not going to get into that, very honestly speaking. Because it's complicated. But I want to say one thing very clearly, is that everyone on the committee, from the chairman onwards, are together in the fundamental principle that education is for all, and education has to be something that cares for the marginalized the most. And education begins even before a child is born. Education starts with the pregnant mother. I think when we're saying education policy, we're looking at from the pregnant mother till higher education. That's the bandwidth of change. So the spirit of the committee, I think, is to ensure that we can offer suggestions as much as we can to ensure that every child in the state, whichever stage the child is able to access that freedom, is able to make choices on their own. And our system should support those who are marginalized in various ways. They could be marginalized in many ways. Migrants have a different sections of certain marginalizations. Dalits, tribals have a different kind of marginalization. Gender marginalization, we have genders, those kind of marginalizations. We have access, issues of access to certain kind of knowledge systems. I think all that, when we say marginalization, we understand it's huge bandwidth. And I think all of us are prioritizing the fact that we need an education system that allows anybody, any child, to be able to pursue whatever they want without fear. One of the biggest problems in any education system is fear, bayam. நான் போய் பேசலாமா அங்க என்ன ஒத்துப்பாங்களா? You know, we forget one thing. Education is not just about opening schools and saying it's for all. The education is about us going out and saying all of you are welcome. I'd like to think our education policy will be as welcoming as that, and saying everybody is welcome. And we have to hold hands of those people who need help. It's our job to do it. And I think that all the points that I discussed about the classroom, about another thing, art being a very important role, and I think the word inclusivity is not just a word in this policy. We are looking at it in various angles, and whatever changes we feel are required to make the system more robust, we try to do, and our suggestions will be made. Of course, we have to. I mean, we don't have a choice, right? I mean, but let's be very clear. The NEP is already in operation, right? It's not something just in the paper. So, I mean, when we prepare the SCP, we have to consider what is the NEP. We have to read the NEP. We have to look at points there is great disagreement. We'll have to see how the hell we have. We did that part if you want. We have to see how we can put forward a state education policy that also challenges certain very fundamental things that are problematic with the NEP. But also the NEP is in function. So how does there is a certain issue there. We have to tackle that issue. NEP is not imagination. It's there.
Yeah.
So we have to have a policy that allows the child to be able to, take forward the proposals from the SCP. Also find a way, in a way that it's free to move in whatever way, considering what the NEP is. It's a very messy space. It's messy in all kinds of spaces. So we can't ignore the NEP. We'll have to confront it. And I think we will confront it. Not necessarily true. Not necessarily true.
Because otherwise you'll be going in contradiction to what they
You could. I mean, we can.
Yeah.
There's no harm done.
Okay.
There's no necessity that we should not contradict the NEP. I don't want to get into the detailing. I want to stay away from the detailing. There is obviously places where we don't. I think it's not just a political thing, right? There's also an educational thing. I think as people in education who have read the NEP, we all have very, very strong disagreements on certain fundamental issues that may be there. I think that will have to show up in the way, whatever way it does. And we'll see. We'll see.
It's a huge challenge.
No, that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that we have to understand the complexity of the challenge. It's very easy to say, NEP says this, what are you going to do? I mean, it's not as simple as that. Right? In social media, people are talking about it so easily. But we understand the complexity of the issue that there is. So we have to challenge it. We have to have our own path. The state has a right to have its own path in education. That is what we are foregrounding. And we'll figure out a way. And please remember, our policy is It's a vision document. So what happens after that is not under our control. So I didn't plan to be a rebel and get up. Well, I don't even know whether I'm a rebel in some ways. I don't even know actually. Maybe I'm not a rebel enough. Some people may feel like I do. There are people who feel I am not pushing things as much as I should. Maybe they have a point. I don't know. See, very honestly, I grew up. I didn't see myself here. How could you see me? 25 years ago, if that T M Krishna meets T M Krishna, what are you doing with your life? Probably going to say that. And I probably say that, you were this kind of a human being? Like, I probably think that way. But like I said, I think the only thing that probably I can say is my home and my school. I studied in the J. Krishnamurti school, which also allowed me to basically be whoever I want. I think those two have played a major role in not kind of constricting my mind in any mold. We have multiple molds we all fit into, but I always was uncomfortable the moment I knew that I'm like fitting into a mold. This. Because that means you're not really thinking, you're not really feeling. You're just going, it's a habit, you're just doing the habit. It's like getting morning and brushing your teeth. Then sing a concert like that only. Actually not different. If you do something, I'm not going to say it's like you coming to office, but nevertheless, I'm sure some of you are thinking maybe we do the same thing. You probably do, by the way. But it is like that, right? You get up in the morning, brush your teeth, you go in the evening, sing a concert. After a point, how is it different? If you're good enough, if you have the abilities, you have the skills, and you're going to upskill yourself, as they say now, constantly, I can do this for 60 years, but it's like, it's actually not a big deal. We make it a big deal. It's not a big deal. Take it from me, I'm good at singing. It's not a big deal. But I think for me the trigger was, 2-3 triggers happened. I didn't think that I was going to be speaking politics or social justice or environmental justice. I never thought I would. I don't think I wasn't so seriously engaged in any of this. I wanted to be a great singer. I wanted every award that you could get. I was like any other person. My wife uses the word avaricious, probably that. I was as avaricious. And so I was, but the good thing was, I had grown up in such an environment. That was like a self-check for me. So in the times when I was quieter and maybe myself, I probably asked myself, what are you doing? And it's very pleasurable to be popular. You go to a concert, everybody applauds, it's a huge pleasure. And like you said, the mold, whatever mold, I probably was not the typical mold always. Also because, I grew up in a slightly more cosmopolitan house. I didn't come from a family of musicians. My mother sings, yes, but not professional singer. So I come from a business family. So a little bit, maybe the exposure was slightly different, the home. That's also possible. But I think what happened was, towards the late 1999, 2000, that period of time, or maybe even before, I think what happened was I felt, as a performer, you're expected to be in complete command, right, of all what you're saying. That's true of any field, but I'll just give you the musician's perspective. You're on stage, you're in complete control of everything. And you're in complete control of the audience, right? So, as they all say, when eating out of your hand, as they say, right? They must be eating out of your hand, right? So, that's expected. In fact, you learn how to do it, right? People think it just naturally comes. No, you actually pick it up. You go to listen to concerts, you're watching artists. You're not just watching music, you're watching technique, performance technique. You're watching what do you throw at what point to get back attention. All these things you've learned, right? The funny thing that I started experiencing was, this is great. I knew exactly what I was doing. But finally, for me, the best musical experiences were when I was not in control. That is, I'm not in command of myself like that. I'm not in command of you. And at that time, music was magic. So this was a contradiction for me. So this was crazy. I said, look, if I'm supposed to be a great singer or becoming a great singer, and if the best music is when I'm not in control, what is it about me at that point of time that is allowing the best music to come? So it's purely a self-question. Okay? Actually, it's a question of power. If you want to use very sociological terms, it's a power question. So the question was where I don't show my... So when you're in control, what you're actually demonstrating is power. Skill sets kept aside, okay? What you're demonstrating is power. And it's intoxicating. And if you have the power, you can actually hold everybody. Right? So I said, if I lose the power, I seem to be doing better stuff. Or the music is more beautiful. It doesn't make sense, no? So then I said, this is something I have to think about deeply. So I said, okay, these people say Carnatic music is old, they say 1,000 years. I said, let me understand where it came from. So I started doing research about Carnatic music. Purely musicology. I had never done musicology in my life. I was no scholar by the longest shot. But I started reading books. I took the help of scholars. I read from Nati Shastra downward. I read as much as I could. And I think that learning of history, of people who are not singing, of power, of how cultures are, shall we say, programmed, right? That got me asking deeper questions about my position in this entire thing. Where am I placed in this? So, what is my role in perpetuating this power? Because I'm also doing it. Yeah. So, that's when things started changing. The first thing that changed, now people have even forgotten it now. It's unbelievable how it's forgotten. The first thing I changed was the performance of Carnatic music. The whole style of performing Carnatic music I changed back in 2006-05. The funny thing is most people have even forgotten that now.
It's deliberately to question the status?
No, none of this. See, but I think it's true of most people who try things that are not set. It's not you get up one morning and say, I'm going to do this. No, it's an organic process. Sometimes it happens on the fly on stage. You know, it just happens one day. And then you're like, wow, what happened there? So a lot of it is actually very organic. And then you reflect on what has happened. You come back home and you think about it and say, okay, what happened here? And you discard some of the things that you do. You learn from it. So it's not strategic or it is not planned, but it is very organic. And of course, you're being smart about it. I won't say you're not. I was being. But then through a period of time, the first thing I changed was the way the performance was sung. I broke down the entire concert format. It's interesting, it's forgotten now because it's loosened up so much, the format in the last 2 decades, but people now don't remember that in 2005 it was considered blasphemy. Yeah. I mean, they were like, what is this guy doing? He's like destroying Carnatic music heritage, right? My politics has become so strong, they don't care about that now. They're like, oh my God, that was better than this. So I think then it's a process. Then you allow yourself to change. You allow yourself. Then you're asking political questions. You're asking social questions. You're asking caste questions, gender questions. Then one by one. And I think the greatest gift for me has been the kind of friends I have made across areas of work. And they have changed me immensely. Because I have friends from across the social spectrum, across fields of activity, across regions, the world, with whom I would have had no relationship if I had been just a Carnatic musician. And I think they have opened windows and doors and perceptions that are incredible that I would have never seen. And I think that in turn has also influenced my music, let alone my other work. The way I sing, the way I think about music has changed tremendously because of the friendships I've made. I've learned one thing. Never say never in life. Because you don't know what's going to throw a thing. But I don't see myself like that because I inherently push back on any kind of homogeneity, any kind of power. That's my nature. So I don't know how I'll fit into, political dogmas and political, I don't know. I don't see myself as a person who can say yes because it comes from above. I see myself as a political person right through my life. Whether I mean party politics is it's a different world. And also that, remember, if I do that, I have to give up everything else I'm doing in my life. Am I willing to give up all that? I mean, I treasure everything else I'm doing. You enter party politics, that's a 24/7 work. Just be very clear. So I don't know. I don't see myself that way. Actually, that word itself I'm confused. It's like I didn't figure that word out for a long time, right? So then there is a rural accent also. I don't know. It's. I don't know how they come up with this term. You have to meet this. When people use, see, if you think of why people give, why people give people labels. Like he said rebel, right? You said urban accent. Somebody else says something. Is I think basically because they are scared of something. So it's actually more a reflection of the people telling you that. I'm talking about any label, by the way. It is not just about this. Even the label, somebody else say the same thing. Right? Labels are all a problem. Because labels blind us from being able to engage. And I probably am as much at fault doing that to people. I'm probably as much at fault. So these labels don't worry me so much as really when people throw it. I say, yeah, fine. If that's what you want to see, that's what you see. But if you come and have a conversation, we can still vehemently have an argument, disagree. But I'm not such a bad guy actually. Pretty decent person. But but I think the problem is we've reached a point today where there's so much noise that you can't hear, you can't listen. You just cannot listen. Right? There's so much noise. So the first thing is you're triggered. Everybody's triggered. And the moment everybody's triggered, then it's over. The only people winning is the people who knew you'll get triggered.
Yeah.
And they do a very good job of it. They train. So these labels don't bother me, but I think I also come from the privilege of not being bothered by the label. Right? There could be people for whom that label can be life or death.
Yeah.
So if they call somebody who is not so socially powerful an urban axle, somebody may tomorrow attack their house and kill them. So it's also sometimes a whistle call for people to go and attack people. So it's violent in many ways too, right? It also negates the possibility of a conversation with that person. You should be able to talk to anybody. Anybody, and I mean anybody. And if anybody says you should not have a conversation with this person because this person X, Y, Z, there is a problem. And I'll say this across political spectrum. That you should be able to talk to anybody on anything. That is what democracy is. Democracy is in the ability for us to have a conversation. That is the whole thing. And I think we're losing today. We have probably lost a lot of it. Crying.
Yes.
I was in tears. But you were surprised.
Yeah.
So tell me why you were surprised. If I didn't look like this, if I had one namam or one vibhuti, very serious question. And if I fitted the bill of a religious person and I had cried, would you have been surprised? No, right? It's interesting, no?
Yeah.
So you are not surprised because of what? You are surprised because you had an image of me. Your surprise was with the image, not with me. So the question is also, why did I cry? Was I thinking of Rama at that point? Why do you think I cried? Why do you think I cried? நான் ஏன் அழுதேன்? அதுக்கு என்ன ரீசனாக இருக்க முடியும்?
You will be engrossed in the entire meaning of that song.
Suppose I say no. No. Then why did I cry?
Some spiritual reality.
I say no. No, nothing spiritual. Then why did I cry? No, it's a very serious question you asked me. I'm also seriously answering you. You have used two words. You said one is the meaning of the song, and I'm saying no. You're saying spiritual. I'm a little scared of that word, so I'll stay away from it. So I'll say no. Can I still cry for the song? Is it possible? These are two reasons that make you cry. Correct. Now, there could be reasons that are not part of your reasons, which are my reasons, no? So my relationship with the composition may be not the same as your relationship with the composition. All that matters is I have a deep relationship with the composition. I have a very deep relationship with the composition. Or there could be anything. But the point is, this is one of the problems we face today. That even having deep experiences are now categorized as certain things. A deep experience is one that cannot be categorized. If someone told me they had a deep experience because of this, it's not a deep experience. When you have a deep experience, you will not be able to tell me why.
You can't express it in words.
That is a deep experience. If I say I got a spiritual feeling, it is not deep, it's shallowness. If I say it is because I connected with Tyagaraja's words, it's superficial. I'll say it bluntly. But if I say when I sang the Tyagaraja Kirtana, something profound, something happened, and it is not connected with any of, I don't know how to even say it, then I know it's
You
deep.
just melt into that.
I don't even want to use a word for it. But all I'm saying is, every human being has this capacity. Every human being goes through this. You ask anybody, sometimes they go for a walk, it happens. For some people, when they're running, they do this. When they're going for a run, they have very deep experiences. To me, it's not any different than singing Tyagaraja Kirtana. Are we willing to accept that? Are we willing to say a person going on a run has a deep experience which is the same as going to a temple or same as singing a Tyagaraja Kirtana? How can you say that? No, for me it is possible. It is just something you don't say in words. That's about it. I think that's it's also a party position. Let's be very clear. Because the CPM, there is a history to it, there is a communist history to it, and I get it. I mean, I completely get it, and I think I respect that view. At the same time, I don't think that needs to be the universal view. Well, then Nobel should never be accepted all in the world, I guess, because the primary biggest award is also problematic, right? And if you start doing that, you can't buy most cars you buy on street today. Because all the original money probably came from Nazi banking money.
Yeah.
You should not have a Benz in this country. Most of the banks, Swiss banks, I'm not sure the names, but many of them were actually party to Nazi money. So I'm just saying, the moment you push back, a lot of things we are doing today has a dirty past. It's about each one of us. It's each one person has to decide on that call. I'm not to judge a person either way for it. It also matters, I think in case of the Magsaysay, I think one thing has to be said. Yes, it has a problematic past, I don't think it can ever be denied. Is who are the people who have been given the award in the last 4-5 decades? That's what the award stands for, right? And if you look at that, I think there is considerable argument to make that the awards have gone to people who have thought about society, at least. Right? And if you look at it in that angle, I think it is a very fair and important award. But if you're going to take this view of history, fine, that is also possible. But then let's think about where we will draw the line. And that will get complicated. It gets very messy. I mean, it's not simple. It gets very, because then you can ask questions about many things. Many things, from the clothes we wear, I can ask you questions. Then it gets a little iffy, right? So I think every human being or every group find a way to draw their line of ethics. Especially if it goes in this history direction. And we can debate it, we can disagree. Somebody may completely disagree with what I've said now. That's acceptable. We can disagree. But I think what is more important for me is what is my ethical behavior. What is the ethical behavior of the Ramon Magsaysay Committee to the award? And to me that works. I don't think that's what I meant. If that's what you understood from that, I stand corrected. Because in that piece, if you also saw, I also made the point of, or in some of the piece I've spoken about, everybody speaking about what they want to speak about. That's fine. No, my problem is taking an ethical high ground. When I say speaking about it, what I'm trying to say there, particularly, is you can't take an ethical high ground today. Especially, let me that way, especially movies that have portrayed Pakistan as permanently a horrible place. We've never said anything. In fact, I believe those movies actually create more hatred between already, estranged neighbors. Right? We've also seen the movie and celebrated. There is always one evil commander. There is always some, ISI fellow. I mean, this is the only thing we see of Pakistan in Indian films, right? Now, is that also a form of creating homogeneity in a set of people and painting them all in the same brush? It is, right? So all I'm saying is, when we did not think there was an ethical problem there, let's not take an ethical high ground. Please speak today. But I will ask, are we also willing to say to ourselves, no need to do it publicly, said, we failed there. Why can't we say that? I don't care whether you're left, right, center. Why can't I tell myself, I will speak up on this, but I will also acknowledge that I failed in not speaking about something? What is wrong in that acknowledgement? I'm not saying I have to take every cause. I can't. Right? It's just, first of all, not possible. And I don't. I'm also accused of not taking many causes, by the way. Right? This is not a whataboutery question. Let me be very clear. The statement is not a whataboutery statement. It's a statement of consciousness. Do we have the consciousness within ourselves to say, I too failed ethically? That's all I'm asking. Because for 50 years we've allowed caste violence in movies, across film industry, gender violence in movies, across film industries, homogeneously portraying transgenders in just horrendous ways for 4 or 5 decades. And are you going to telling me that, it is, don't expect me to talk about everything? No way. I will ask you that question. And I'm not asking for one incident. That's what about it. I'm asking about our ethical behavior. So can we say, yes, I find Kashmir files deeply problematic. I've spoken about it in the article, I've written an entire paragraph, criticizing the movies. At the same time saying, can I step back and say, where else I failed? I think we should do that for our own growth, for our own, self-consciousness. That's all I'm asking. And if you point out saying that I have something that I have not seen, I will think about it. And I'm not saying it means everything has been. The other thing today, I think, it is also a social media problem, right? Because everything now has been public to acknowledge that you even think that way. It's like always you have to tell everybody, I'm also thinking about this. Don't worry, I'm also thinking about this. Don't worry, I also feel this. It's like almost a compulsive disorder. If I wrote this, that person may think I didn't write. It's like crazy how our brain works now. No? All our brains work like that. I'm like putting out and saying, oh, but I didn't speak when that happened. No, what will happen? Because it's ridiculous. Why should we think? I agree with you. Why should we think that way? You feel you want to speak about it, speak about it. But don't think you're sitting on an ethical high horse because you spoke about it. And I will stick my neck out and say, especially liberals have to think of this more. Because I expect better out of liberals. First of all, the awards are always very very uncomfortable situations because you really don't know. Because first you if you at least momentarily you ask the question, have I really done anything seriously, right? And then you're like, no, but it's just ideas. You've done a little bit. Has it taught? How can you measure? Especially within the world of culture, you can't really measure what work you do. There's no way, right? So that's the first thing. Two is I'm always worried that, awards kind of also sit on your head, some manner, in all kinds of ways, right? So I think At the same time, I think definitely the Magsaysay opened a lot of doors for meeting a lot of people, for learning a lot from people. So I'm very, very grateful to that. That post the Magsaysay, I got friends, I made friends, I spoke to people. That was incredible. So the work I could do, the places that I could, especially because I very strongly believe transformation has to happen in the heart. People have to feel differently. It's not enough if I think you and I are equal. I have to feel that you and I are equal. And that's where I think culture and art play such an important role. And I think that the Magsaysay has helped me push this very important agenda for me. Saying, it's no point if you just say, do this. No, the question is how can I change the way you feel towards me or I feel towards you? And that's where art or music or theatre, doing little things slowly. The thing about art, that the reason why people are not so interested in it, beyond the pleasure of it, is because it's like sipping whiskey. You don't gulp the whiskey down. You drink it slowly. And that's the analogy I'm going to give. I don't care what people think about it. Because it takes time. You don't know when the effect is going to be. So cultural transformation is slow, sometimes 2 generations. So when people say, okay, I did this, tomorrow because of this, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think the Magsaysay allowed me to tell people that sometimes you need to wait. We need to just put certain things in place. Give people the opportunity to experience life differently, see different cultures, engage with different art forms, with dances, with music, with language, with dialects. And some things change. And the greatest joy it gives me is when somebody comes and says, I did not like anything you did, but I listened to, I came somewhere, came to a festival that you were part of, and I experienced something, and I went back deeply impacted. And to me, that day I go back home and say, I smile and say, okay, there's something, okay, you're doing something. And those things matter. And I think that the Magsaysay allowed me to think these things through. Also push this in different spheres of activity, of telling people, think about this a bit more. Because art is seen as a pleasurable thing or is seen as a tool. For example, in politics, you have songs of some ideology.
Yeah.
It's still a tool. You don't take art to be just itself.
Right.
And by doing something to it, something can change. The even political world of India has not really figured that out. Right? The leftists are going to be angry with this statement, but I stand by it. They've also used it only as a tool for a certain ideology.
Yeah.
No, I think art is something that is part of human experience and societal experience. So it influences everything that happens. The question is, can we change that? Can we play with that? Can we twist it? Can we give access when there's no access? Can we equalize things? Can we change who is participating? Can we change content? And let art do what it does. I think that I've been able to kind of move a bit. I think the dialogue has been immensely. I think the dialogue has been immensely fruitful because I've learned a lot. I've learned 2 things. If you want to talk about what I would position as elite art forms, is that one thing I learned through the exercise is why do many people stay away from elite art forms? Right? It's not just Carnatic music or Hindustani music. You can say Western classical music. You can say about any art form that is occupying, say, the top tier of societal structure. And most people will use the usual excuse saying it's very complicated and all that. And I think that's extremely condescending. You're basically telling the rest of society you're not good enough to listen to this. That's the most condescending thing we'll tell society. So I am not saying that I want 10,000 people to listen to this. What I'm saying is, can we have diverse people? Now, there are so many of us sitting in this room. It's not that we are saying that there should be 50,000. We're saying, can we all be different people from different cultures? So one great learning for me was the reason why elite art forms are people from diverse communities stay away is because of all the other messaging that it gives, not the music. So one we forget that when you listen to a form of music, you're not listening only to sound. You're listening to so much more information that is already there in your head. The moment the sound or that picture or that movement comes in, your brain's already tapping into all information related to what you're seeing. Right? It could be about where you saw it last time, could be family, could be society, could be who dances, could be so many things, right? So what you see is processed through all these layers of information already there in your head. So you're not actually seeing it. You're only visualizing your bias.
Yeah.
I realized that was the problem with these forms. Nobody has a problem with Raga, Kambuj, or Todi or Kalyan. That's not the problem. The problem is the moment that sound comes, it triggers a huge array of dislike, disinterest, because of how it is positioned itself in society. Saying we are special.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we can cross that barrier, for which we need to do things. So I think in art there are three spaces that we need to, I think it's probably true of anything, is people, content and space. As long as we can keep changing this, then we can do magical things. Is who are the people doing it or listening to it? What are we sharing in content? Where are we sharing? You subvert this constantly, and then you're having fun. Then something in that person's brain is turned around. If I see an art form which I've never seen on the street, the way I see the art form suddenly changes.
Yeah.
Right? Or if I see somebody who I don't imagine would sing this form, singing it, then the song sounds different. It's not the same song, it's a different song. So I learned how to do this through the Vida.
Okay.
And I also, I think the fact that the Vida was an equalizer in many ways of our diverse art forms allowed these art forms to bounce off each other, communities to bounce off each other, and that it is actually possible to create a space, a non-elite exclusive space where this is possible. We also transformed the Sabha. In one of our Vedas are always also taken to a Mailapur Sabha,
Oh, yeah.
where we turned the Sabha on its head. So we did Tirunagi festival, I remember, in Mailapur Sabha. We did a festival of North Chennai in a Mailapur Sabha. So doing that also changed, because the audience that normally comes there in the evening suddenly were experiencing things that they would never experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think because society is so divided in the way it is organized, I think sometimes people are just habituated in that organization. All human beings are not evil people. Right? They are just stuck in a certain organization. If you can think that way, then we can talk to everybody. Now, if they experience something that's out of the organization, maybe that evening they went back saying I was wrong, having this impression.
Right.
Or they learned something and they said how beautiful this is. I never thought this is beautiful before. Maybe the next time they go to some place, they see something. Similarly, people on the margins, there is fear. If you see the social powerful, of course there will be fear. Maybe in this interaction they said, there are also nice people there. And, maybe they love my music or love my food or love whatever. Maybe we can have maybe a next conversation will be slightly better.
Yeah.
So I think little movements that we have seen in the Vida through large communities, wherever we did it, has taught us a lot on how these conversations have to be framed. So for me, and personally, it's incredibly enriching. The collaborations that we have done, the way we have sat together and curated the festivals, the self-criticism that we have seen in the bunch, and even the clashes that sometimes happen in the meeting between two people who are from very different social spheres, but very strong opinions. But you could have that, and you could grow out of that. I think the Vida has given space for a lot of these things for us. It's very difficult to describe it actually in some ways, right? So, yeah, if I go to an auditorium, I do get looks. If you ask me that, of course I get looks. It's a mixed bag, I think, right? And also depends which generation of people. I think the older people older up to my generation, okay, are far more uncomfortable to an extent. But unfortunately, I sing pretty well, so they still come to my concert. So I think that's a dichotomy they are not able to figure out as yet. We all struggle. So they generally say, "No, not best again. Our kacheri will get over there." Now that irritates the extreme ones who really hate me, like to the extreme. Say, why do people go to these guys' concert? So they are pissed. They're like, technically, I should be boycotted. Unfortunately, that has not really happened. I mean, I really thought one time it will happen. Let's be very clear. One time I really thought there'll be a point when this Carnatic world will boycott. I'm like, yeah, fine. Because, I mean, if you look at it, I've been able to survive pretty much without that world for some time now. So I've kind of found my own space. So I think it's a mixed bag for people there. There are those who prefer that I did not exist. There are those who find it difficult to deal with this. They have deep problems with my political statements. They have mainly problem with my statements on caste and faith. That's their problem. I mean, everything else is irrelevant. These two spaces where they have a problem. I also think most of them don't understand what I'm saying. It sounds really wrong to say, but I will say it out there. Especially about faith. About caste, I think they understand. Okay? And I get where that feeling comes from. I completely disagree. But with faith, they don't have no clue what I'm talking about. I'm sure about it. Because so many have spoken to me. I mean, some people, they've decided I'm agnostic, they've decided I'm atheistic, they've decided all that. I have never said any of those things. So in their brain, if you're critical of faith, so in our society today, we have no right to be critical of our faith. If I'm critical of my faith, the what about it question, why are you not critical about that faith? I said, let that guy, there are people there doing that. It's not like there aren't people. There are people in every community being self-critical. Similarly, I am critical of the community that I was born to, which is the Brahmin community. There are activists among the Tevar community, there are activists among the Nadar community, there are activists among diverse communities who are critical about their community. My job is to be critical of the life experience I have. And I will be critical of it. I want us to change. This group to change, because I know what this experience is. Similarly, in faith. I was born within a certain understanding of Hinduism. And I will be self-critical of it. Right? So, I think they're confused a bit. But I think the younger people are different. I wish I was as enlightened as many of the 22-year-olds today. I think the younger people today are, people keep saying they're the Gen Z and they are the Instagram. No, I really think that they are far more enlightened than me when I was 22, 23. The things they know about society, the way they're able to challenge things, it's very admirable. Very admirable. I sometimes I wish when I was 23 I had this awareness. I didn't. So I think the younger generation within the Carnatic community are different. Because I have a lot of conversations with them. And I think they are different. But the older, and I can understand why if they're older they find it difficult. It's understandable in the sense, it's difficult for a person to get out of their own. I'm okay with that. I'm not. Do I hold back? Good question. I like to believe that I don't. But I think the fact of the matter is incidents that happen in your life sometimes make you rethink and hold back. That is what the whole question when we talk about freedom of expression. That's what we're discussing. Discussing is, do you think once or twice, oh my God, I don't want trouble? Yeah, of course. It's happened to me so many times. There are times I'm like saying, I don't have the bandwidth for it now. Of course, and I know, and I'm thinking to myself, I should not think that way. Because I'm the last person usually. But society has, and you're not only thinking for yourself, you're thinking for your family. So, the thing about creating an oppressive society is just instilling this fear. Job done. Just put this fear. And imagine a person with so much privilege as me having a drop of this in my head. Then say, imagine the people who don't have even say 20% of the privilege I have. Why would that person open their mouth? Then we ask why that person didn't speak up. Or when Me Too cases come, we say, why did this girl speak up 10 years ago? I mean, it's atrocious that we can even ask that question. When we have all the privilege, yes, say, எதுக்கு வம்பு நம்மளே சொல்றச்சே. Imagine. See, these words are all very dangerous words for me. Because I don't know when you say, I'll tell you why, that's simple. When you use that word, I don't know what you meant by it.
Some people's faith, some people.
No, I'm saying even any of those words, seeking, search, how does one figure what you mean as such? I don't know. And spiritual, I really don't know. I'm actually stayed away as much. I use it sometimes, but I kind of stay away from it because I don't know what especially those words, because they are very heavy words, right? So I don't know. I mean, I'm only interested in, put very simply, I am interested in the way we can lead our lives, all of us. And that cannot be only a functional thing. It is experiential. And it just means, can we be better people? Now, is that a seeking spiritual? It's up to you. Now, what does it to me mean a better person? I don't think there is a perfection to it. Can you be a better person? It's a very simple question. And which means, are you willing to unlearn every day? That's all it means. To be a better person, all we need to do is unlearn every day. Right? I think that's all we're doing. Now, is this faith? Is this religion? Is this spiritual? I don't know. I actually don't care. I really don't care. Which is why I don't see a dichotomy of my singing and my activism. To me, they're all part of the same continuum. I see no dichotomy. People ask me 100 times. To me, it's not a difference because it's the same thing. Art experience for me is finding ways of being sensitive. Life experience should be finding ways of being more sensitive. Simple. I will make mistakes. I also make mistakes when I sing. I will make mistakes. I will fall on my face. I just get up and say, okay, let's try this. We tried this. It didn't work. Let's try this. That's all. So, when you said our culture, what is that?
Our culture.
No, what? I don't know what this is. So explain that. Who's our? This our in your group.
You were asking. I'm not quoting any.
No, I want to know. No, because before I answer that question, I want to be very clear on what you mean by our. So, if you say our culture,
Indian culture.
what is Indian culture? No, I want to know because I seriously want to know this because we are using these words too much today. Now, if you let's do one thing. இங்க அம்பத்தூர்ல இருக்கோம். இங்க இருந்து ரெண்டு தெரு பின்னாடி போயிட்டு அவங்க கல்ச்சர் என்னன்னு கேட்கலாம். அதுவும் எனக்கு சம்பந்தமே இருக்காது. அது our culture. Is that in this our culture when I say, am I including? I know nothing about it. They probably think my culture has got nothing to do with them. It's true. நான் சொல்றது பொய்யே இல்லை. We experience it. So when I say Indian culture, when I say, see, your idea of Indian culture is what you experienced. First of all, Indian, what is the extent of it? Does India include what all cultures are we talking in Indian culture? Are the Tibetans living in India part of Indian culture? Okay, so my point is, I'm trying to say is that I like to be very careful when I use words like our culture. I think there is our cultures in plural. There is no singular culture. And I don't know 99% about it. I know 1% of my life experience. What my family and my circle took me is my way of understanding Indian culture. Same for you, same for him, same for him. Right? Now, if you ask me from this, so when I answer that question, I can only answer from this. I cannot answer from the experience of the person in the next street. அடுத்த தெருல இருக்கிறவருக்கு இந்தியன் கல்ச்சர்னா வேற மீனிங்க. So in Indian culture, when I say can I take from my past, our past and your past சம்பந்தமே இருக்காது. இன்னொன்னு கேட்கிறேன், என் பாஸ்ட் வந்து அவருக்கு வன்மறையா இருந்தா நான் என்ன பண்ணுவேன்? இருக்கலாம்.
What I wanted to ask is there nothing from the
I
past?
will come to you, but I am saying what past we are taking from is from itself very limited. You are taking from your past. I am taking from my past. He is taking from his past, not Indian culture's past. That's a fraud. We are taking from our own past. The Indian culture you speak about is your past, your Indian culture past, if you want to call it that. Now, is there anything to take from my past? If you ask me, first, that is the way I grew up, what my parents taught me, what my family taught me, what my school taught me. Of course, there are things that you can take. Who can ever deny? A lot of things I'm saying today comes from the past. No action is without history. Every action has history, right? But you also have to be always challenging your past. Always. You have to challenge your past. So, I do believe all past need change. There are elements from it that are still with you. Beauty, beautiful, goodness elements. There is there in every human being, in every past. And of course you want to keep that. Of course you want to keep that. But you also want to say that can it reach more people? Same in a hypothetical situation. Say my parents were wonderful people to me, but they were not wonderful people to her. My question will be, now are they bad or good people? How do I answer that question? Right? My question will be, fine, that those beautiful qualities that they gave me, can I make sure it's not limited to me but it's limited to 10 people? So I am taking something from the past and I'm also questioning the past. I'm saying my parents are wrong. But I'm also saying there was that other part of them that maybe we can do something with. That is how. So I don't think we can. So as far as the Indian cultures are concerned, I think if you really want to go to the past, right, it's a very messy game. And if you want to say it is something that we all share in these multiple pasts, actually it's multiple pasts, not single past, then we must be willing to learn from different pasts. I must be willing to listen to somebody who tells me a story of the past that is very uncomfortable for me and say, yes, that is true. Your past has shared this experience to you. The same story has a different. One story can be loved by one person, hated by the other person, right? So which is the truth? The truth is when these two stories can talk to each other. That's the truth. The incident is the same. But if I say her narration of the story is something I will not consider at all, my narration is convenient, that should be what everybody accepts, then I'll say, please go take a hike. That past I don't want. Well, I've managed till now, so I can't be complaining. I mean, I actually have nothing to complain about. To be very honest, I think life has thrown me a good dice.
Okay.
Some of the younger musicians told me one thing recently. They said, you know what, you have actually shown us a way of being able to be musicians and not get stuck there. And now we are, because they also need to see somebody who has succeeded. And they say, once I see you succeed, it's like, yeah, we don't need to worry about this. So it's a good thing about it. I mean, I've survived, I've more than survived, I've done well for myself. I do sing concerts and I do get paid for it decently, I promise you. So I am making some good money that keeps my family going. And so it's not been easy. Of course, not been easy. And doubts. And it can be very lonely. It can be very, very lonely because you have friends because I'm married to somebody who agrees with this philosophy, these philosophies, and of course we battle it out every day at home in huge arguments. But yet you're still alone, and sometimes that can get to you, and you must just have the ability to say, okay, just let it be. Little triggers can bother you.
Yeah.
The pressure can get claustrophobic sometimes. Like, oof, I need space. I just need to just let go. Well, I've said this before. I think when I was younger, I didn't do a good job of it. I would say that in the early days, I failed well. I don't think I did enough as I could have done at that point of time, and that's a regret. I don't think I completely comprehended the complexity of what was happening. But later on, I'd like to believe I'm slightly better again. She'd probably have a different opinion. You would ask her.
Sure.
But it is, it's deeply gendered experience, right? And like any other field, but more so in art form that is tagged as classical and traditional, where the gender experience is even more, it's a burden. The men have it easy, very, very easy in the field. The kind of opportunities I would get, a woman would not get. The system gives me an impetus that would never give me for a woman. And in the case of Sangeeta, because she's married to me, it was a double whammy. Because you're both performers and the priorities just naturally passed on to me than her. So these are very difficult for her. And then my politics makes it harder for her. Because I can get away with it. She can't get away with it. And it's also true that when people want to target you, they prefer targeting people around you.
Yeah.
Because they're easy targets. And they know that you will not react to that.
Right.
Because it will come off wrong.
Yeah.
Right? It'll come off like you're doing it because the person is your partner.
Right.
Well, you're actually asking an ethical question, but it'll never be understood that way. So they know it. So she has, been at the front of facing things in her professional career because she was just happened to be my partner. So it's not at all easy. It's one of those things that are unresolved.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Yeah. See, one of the problems is that even if it's institutional informal, that's one of the problems. The culture is so informal.
Yeah.
So you may say you go become a student of collection, or I become a student of collection. See, in terms of structure, you're going into a government of India institution. You're paying fees to government of India. All that's fine. But if you look at what a classroom is, it's no different from you having your private lessons from home. The attitude, the conversation, the casualness, the boundaries being crossed so easily is very much like private lessons. So, you can put 100, but I think having said that, correct one thing I said. Having said this, I think in an institution it is at least possible to structurally put certain things in place. Like you have in universities, in many, especially abroad, universities have certain very clear parameters in place in terms of sexual harassment or abuse and how you could report it and the privacy of the person, all that. Now, an institution like Kalakshetra can put all that together, give far more voice to the students. Those kind of things can be done. So actually, I would think that an institution is in a better position to actually make sure you clean up the way things are done. It is much harder in the completely unorganized sector. Because first of all, there is a legal issue because it's not an institution, right? So it's very informal. It's like you just go to somebody's house. My students come to my house to learn class. So, the only complaint place is to go to the local complaint place where the committee she can go. Now, I am not registered to any body and I have not signed any statement saying I shall behave in this manner, otherwise I will be, say, taken out. There is no such structure. So, there is also a lack of structure. Why is there a lack of structure? Because there is a lack of intention. Also, just putting a structure doesn't help. You can all create ICCs. But if the ICC is made to be non-functional, it's very easy.
Yeah.
So I think I've been a big critic of the Guruship Parampara. So answering his question in the past, this is one point that I'm a big critic of. Because I think we have romanticized it too much. Did I get a beautiful Guruship Parampara tradition from my Guru? Of course I did. Of course I did. But are there problems in it? Deep problems in it. Very deep problems. Anecdotal evidence can never be a good argument for anything. Because each of us will have different experience. And any system cannot depend on good people. The system should work when there are horrible people. That's a good system. The Guruship Parampara is a terrible system. It only works if the people are good. If the teacher is a wonderful person, it works beautifully. The sharing is wonderful. Secondly, it's not unique of Indian tradition. I keep like to say that. You meet any scientist, any mathematician. They will tell you that there was one mentor with whom they had a special bond and they walked in the parks and they had discussions. What is that? Guruship Parampara. That is an unbridled sharing between two people, challenging each other's norms. So that is Guruship. Guruship Parampara is that bond between the mentee and the mentor, which is not bound by hierarchy, which allows for a growth of the mind and the freedom of the mind. That is Guruship. It can happen in the house, it can happen in university, it can happen in your office, it can happen anywhere. If you say that is Guruship Parampara, it is something I will treasure. But if you tell me it is about those, recently somebody asked me, I don't know what to say. People say that the Parampara is going. So I said, so what? No, because it's romantic, because he doesn't understand in his mind what it means. I know what it means. At least in the 80s, so I went to part class. I know, I have a better idea. I know the dynamics of difference between me sitting in a classroom and a girl sitting in a classroom. I knew what I was expected of me, what was expected of her. I've seen it happen. And I know horror stories of how people have gone to a great musician's house, stayed there, and doing household chores constantly, not having learned anything. But they were gracious enough not to ever say it about their guru. Because they would not. The guru was a great person. At the same time, there have been great gurus who did sharing. But that's individual. But the abuse that has happened, students who run away from the teacher, saying, I want to leave all this, because they could handle the pressure of the home. So all this is not something beautiful. And there are so many girls who have suffered. Let's be very clear. It is not a one-off case. Anybody telling me that this is just, aberration? No way. No way. And we live in 2023. We don't live in 1875. We live in 2023. I have changed as a guru. There are things I did in my past that I would not do today because I have learned. I have apologized to my students because I felt certain things I should have never done. But why did I do that? Because I was copying my guru. And that's what I thought was normal. But now I've learned and said, no, it has to be different. So we have to change also. It's a good thing to change with times. It's not always a bad thing. I don't think so. I think the ultimate point goes to, I think you don't need, see, again, when we say Guruship Parampara in this age, what we're talking about. If you're talking about this permanent subservience to your teacher, saying namaskaram every day, falling at their feet, all this is completely unnecessary. Okay. You may call it, people may say, he's talking like a
well-wisher.
Western educated man. He doesn't know Indian culture. You are most welcome to say it. But I think I know a little bit more about Tyagarajan than any of these people. Because I sing him every day.
Right.
And I understand Tyagarajan than many of these people talking about Tyagarajan. Or Dikshidhar, anybody. So that way I'm more traditionalist than all these commentators who don't ever come to concerts. All these people writing in social media about 100 things. if they actually say they all come, all these people cursing, if they all came to concert, every concert will have 3,000 people at least. Why in the December season do you have concerts only 100 people?
Yeah.
The number of people on social media who come and shout and say our culture, we have to protect Carnatic music, they don't come to concerts, damn it. So see, at least you come to concerts. We'll get a crowd at least. But they will sit at home and type. Anyway, but all I'm saying is what we need is the spirit of that relationship between the teacher and the student. And I think if you call that Guru Shri Parampara, I say fine. But there should be no hagiography. And most important, you can't give so much power to a teacher that anything is fine. If that is Guru Shri Parampara, it is not Guru Shri Parampara. No, this is what you want to understand this also. At one point we say this, then we all talk about Upanishad also. And the Upanishad, half the time the teacher is being challenged and asked difficult questions by the student. We'll say that, but we'll say here, Guru, you should never ask, you should always be bhakti. So, what are we are contradicting? We are not understanding what we are saying. If you want to really live by this Upanishadic value that these people talk about, then every time a teacher should be challenged about their power. Every teacher knows a question. If you want to really talk about Upanishadic value, I am happy to debate that also. Right? Then here you don't want that. Here you think, and also always thinking students are always there to go after their, the burden put on the student. Especially in all these cases where the student is the evil person, when actually they are the survivors. It's horrific to watch. So you don't need one idealistic, this people have these images sitting under a tree. Everybody sitting around, all these images and with the bird sound. I think this is all Amar Chandrakatha problems. Basically. Real life is not like that. Yeah. So. I'm greatly disappointed. Well, I'm greatly disappointed. I don't think enough has been done to protect survivors. Again, like I said, in the world of Carnatic music, there's one so-called ICC. But tell me why anybody will come to an ICC when the environment is the same. Environment is unsafe for the survivor. So by just saying I have an ICC, and then and then the ICC is full of people that represent that power.
Right.
Why would any survivor go and talk to these people? Right. So you have not changed the culture. Simple. During the music season, they can do simple things. Has there been, for example, any workshops constantly held for musicians? Have you educated musicians on what ethical behavior is? What gender equal behavior is? Have you educated audiences? Have you put even standees in your sabha saying, any kind of sexual abuse is, the standard, the warning, or what do you say? Have you not done that? See, there is in the Carnatic, in this classical word, actually there is a problem for them. They don't like the word sexual. Truthfully, this is the problem. They will never admit it. In their head, somehow, if you put a standee that says sexual abuse, that word sexual there in a sabha kacheri, there is a imagery conflict for them. You know what I'm saying, in their head? Because you're thinking of this some pure thing, This is it's like going to a temple. Now, how can you have a board that says, use the word that says that there is some horrible thing? So rather say that the horrible thing never exists here. And of course, anything sexual is automatically considered to be something that is in the worst side of human beings. So that is also, there is a cultural problem there, which is why they refuse to accept that it's even happening. Don't talk about all those things. Right? So what action has been taken? One is about the people who were accused. But more than that, let's go forward. How can we change our behavior? I think the younger generation are still pushing it forward. Hats off to them. But systemically, no workshops, no education. There's been no public awareness programs. This is what December season should start with 2 days public awareness program on ethical behavior and what sexual violence is for both the audience members. Audience members also engage in sexual harassment of artists. You can ask any woman artist about after a concert whether there have been at least 2 or 3 creeps who come to them. They will all tell you. And there is a whisper network there and they know who these people are. So it's the artist and the audience and the organizer. We have a whisper network or we know who organizers also who are creeps. So, no, why are you not addressing this? Because we don't want to talk about this. Ask you, we put ICC, nobody complained. How will anybody complain? Tell me, how will anybody come near you? When you have shown no intent. I'm telling you, if they had done workshops, if they had done awareness programs, and it's not like this is not been just suggested to them, okay, suggested umpteen times, then at least in a year or 2, the women feel more confident, yes, this system wants to take care. Then you will think twice. So then I don't see anything change. Nothing. But I again think younger generation are far more strong, and when they get into a position of power, I think they will push the